Hello and welcome to Chaos to Clarity, the podcast that's your compass to navigate the exciting world of service-based businesses. If you're a determined woman in your current business adventure, striving to conquer the chaos and build your empire, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Maggie, your go-to business bestie and chaos navigator. I've spent nearly 2 decades in the service-based industry, building a photography business, a yoga studio, and now a thriving coaching practice. I've cracked the code to consistent income without all the chaos and noise. So get ready to increase your business growth, connect with your ideal clients, and find ease in both business and in life. It's time to turn your frustrations into inspiration and your chaos into clarity. So go ahead and grab your coffee, a pen and paper, and let's dive into the journey of building your dream service-based business together. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Chaos to Clarity podcast. My name is Maggie. I am your Chaos to Clarity coach and your business bestie. Today, I have Kelly VanHolven with me, and I am so excited to have her on here. And I'm going to let her tell us about herself. So, Kelly, go ahead and tell us who you are, what you do, and how long you've been in business.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Maggie. I'm super excited. And one of the things I was super excited about that we chatted about in the DMs is that you are in Wisconsin and I grew up in Wisconsin, and I'm always so excited to meet fellow Wisconsinites. So yay. All right, a little about me. I stumbled into this crazy online business world totally by accident about 15 years ago. My daughter was almost a year old. I was working a corporate job, doing things, seeing her like a half hour in the morning and a half hour at the end of the day, and it was awful and I hated it. And our church needed a website redesign, and my husband was like, "You got this. You have a little bit of art background, you're creative, you're like tech savvy, you can do this, you can figure it out." And I was like, "Really? You think?" He's like, "Yes, absolutely." So I volunteered to take on our church website, and that led into a couple of other web design projects. And one of those clients was like, "You know what I really need? There's this new thing I've heard of called Twitter. And it'd be really awesome if you could start sharing about the new things that are coming into our boutique and some of the blog posts that you're writing and stuff. Share that on Twitter. I think this social media thing is going to be big." And so that was kind of my first foray into social media management. And it turned out that I really enjoy it. Cherie was the business owner's name, the boutique owner's name, and I totally credit her with my falling into social media management as a career, because I never would have considered that on my own. As someone who's really hardcore introvert, it felt so scary to put myself out there, but doing it on behalf of a business was so much fun. I got to adopt this like spunky persona of this person who wore all these really cute outfits, and then it was a whole other world. I love it.
Oh, fun. That's so cool. I love that so much. So how was that transition from corporate to entrepreneur? Like, what did that feel like for you?
I took the entrepreneurial journey really, really slow. So once I quit my full-time job, we were fortunate enough that between the little bit of web design work I was doing, like maybe 5 to 10 hours a week, and some daycare on the side, we were able to make ends meet without me having to go all in on my business right from the beginning. So that gave me a lot of time to ease into it, learn the ropes of entrepreneurship, get comfortable with, working from home, figuring out how to schedule things, working around kids' nap times and whatnot. I actually didn't go full time in my business until about 10 years in.
Okay.
And I think that was a huge blessing, just because I wasn't all in from the beginning and rushing so hard to like hold it tightly and make it work. I got to let it work for me. So,
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. I love that so much. And I think so many entrepreneurs that are making that transition from corporate to entrepreneurship, they think that it has to be like one or the other, and that, you can't have that like middle where you're like, well, let's just try it, right? Like, and I have
right.
similar-ish story, right? I spent some time in corporate. And while I was in corporate, I started growing my photography business. So I was doing both at once. At the time, I didn't have kids. So, like that was a little bit different for me where I could maximize like literally all of my waking hours, right?
Yeah,
Either
yeah.
at the 9 to 5 or, on my entrepreneur journey. But, I also did not go all in until probably it was probably 7 years into owning my photography business that I went all in. And then I was like, okay, I'm doing this. This is it. I'm done with corporate. Goodbye. But,
Yeah, so you
I
had a
def
nice solid foundation already. Yeah.
right. Yeah. And as I've grown in my entrepreneur journey and brought on, so I bought a yoga studio and I've also now started a coaching business. Basically starting two businesses over has definitely been very eye-opening for me, right? To see the changes from like, well, what worked in 2007 and 2015 doesn't necessarily work in 2020 and now 2023, right? So
Right.
that was also an interesting journey. So tell me one thing that sticks out that was really challenging for you that you overcame in your business, and how did it overcome, like how did that affect your business? How did overcoming that thing affect your business?
Yeah, yeah. Let's see, that's a good question. There's so many things I feel like, but probably the biggest one is I just listened to your episode on imposter syndrome, so that's on my head right now. But I think the biggest thing actually was this concept of once I was ready to go full time and I hired a coach because I wanted someone's support. I really knew I needed the support to go from what I was doing that almost felt a little like playing at entrepreneurship to
Right.
actually like do it right. But I didn't, I want to tread lightly here the way I say this. I didn't know what I didn't know in some cases. And so I
Mm-hmm.
hired a coach who had everything I wanted to have, but I didn't know enough to ask how she got there.
Okay. Yeah.
And when it came to seeing how she got there, I didn't like the way she was running her business. I didn't like the way she was stepping on people's toes to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a few instances where I felt like she was giving me one story, but the truth was something else. I didn't have, by the end of our working relationship, I didn't have a lot of trust in her or her methods, which was really, really disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
The other part of that was she was very much someone who was like, I am in this for the money. I am in this to make $1 million as quickly as possible. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to get there. And I came at it from a much more fulfillment oriented position. I still want to have my family as my priority. I still want to have my own self care as a priority. As somebody who's introverted and highly sensitive, I need a ton of free time on my calendar. I need
Yep.
a ton of time to process between client meetings and podcast interviews and strategy calls and all the things.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't do that hustle. I couldn't do the sit down at 6 a.m., get 4 hours of work in, take a short little break, and then work until the kids home from school, right? Like, that totally does not fly for me. So it's been a long journey of just learning my own needs and boundaries and what actually works for me compared to what works for the gurus out there, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, no, and I really love that because I also think that as you're making those transitions into entrepreneurship, and if you're looking to connect with a coach, I think that's something important to understand, right? And I've had different relationships with different coaches, some who I still talk to, we're still, I would say like friendly acquaintances, others who I haven't talked to in quite a while because similar to your story, right? Like their business practices, once I found out what they actually were not things that I aligned with. And I think that's,
Mm.
very important and definitely something that as you move through your journey, now that's something to investigate or ask or, get clarity on. And it's definitely not like it's not anything to be, I know I've talked to a few people who are like, oh, but I'm scared, I have trust issues. And, at the end of the day, you need to do what's best for you. And if it gets to the point where you're like, I don't think this is working for me, then it's time to speak up, right? Like, and
Yeah.
understand that you always have the choice to, okay, this person is telling me to do this. I don't have to do this. If it doesn't align with me, I can choose something else. And I think that's important, to realize too.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I do make sure, and I guess this has made me much more compassionate as someone who's now doing coaching in addition to freelance work,
Mm-hmm.
that I make sure my clients are all in.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I have set clear expectations with them for like, this is our coaching container and this is what we will do and this is how we work together. And I definitely don't use the pain point sales tactics and the
Yep.
like, let's get this person so upset that they want to buy. And that was definitely how that coach got me signed. And I like feel shame admitting that, right? Like
Sure.
I at that point in time, this was I think probably before the big movement into like much more compassionate sales.
Mm-hmm.
That was the thing. And that's how I felt like, okay, well, she got me really upset and I'm upset and she's like saying all the right things. Like she's got to be the right person.
Uh-huh.
But yeah. It was a huge learning experience and it definitely colors how I work with my clients today and hopefully for the better.
Right. Yeah. And I think so. And I also think that a lot of those older sales tactics where it's like all pain points and, like I have the only solution. I feel like a lot of that is going to the wayside now, where a lot of people that either I'm connecting with as a potential client or I'm interviewing on podcasts or, are colleagues of mine who, we have similar coaching backgrounds or coach time in coaching. A lot of them are moving more towards this. Okay, you've got a problem. Let's find your solution. I'm going to work with
Mm-hmm.
you and I'm going to help you figure out what works best for you because what works for me is not necessarily going to work for you. You can try it on, sure, but that doesn't mean you're going to 100% match my results. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I can definitely help you, but I'm not going to like promise the world when I know I can't deliver, right? Like if you're all in, I'm all in, great. Let's figure out what's going on. And I think a lot, at least from my experience in a lot of my other coaching relationships prior to like 20, I would say like 2020, 2021 was really kind of when I saw that pivot of like, heavy on the pain points and like
Mm-hmm.
break you down on the sales call. And then they would be like, okay, give me your money kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Like I feel like a lot of that is gone. And a lot of what I see now is more like, okay, let's go through this thing. You have this problem. Okay, here are some solutions I see for you. Do any of these feel like they're going to work? Right. Like, even for me, when I talk to potential clients, like before I ever ask any kind of sales question, I always give some sort of advice or help them with something they're working through. Right. Because I
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily, I'm also like you, I'm not necessarily in it for, I mean, money is nice, right? Like money makes the world go round. And,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
like
For sure.
money is great. I need it to pay for things just like everyone else. But that's not like at the end of the day, I'm not like, oh, that $1 million. That that doesn't like light my fire. But being able to help other women, right? Like navigate whatever they're navigating, navigate their chaos and move into clarity, that lights me up, right? Like I get so excited to talk about like business stuff with women to be like, oh, you're having this problem. Okay, tell me more. I want to know more and I want to help you fix it. Um,
Yeah.
so, I definitely think those tides are changing. And I think that really started with people like you and I who saw those things and we both kind of were like, this doesn't really sit right with me. And
Right.
like I don't like this. And I remember ending a coaching relationship with one of my coaches and I said, I don't align with the things you're talking about right now. And it doesn't check for me to stay in this container. So tell us one business tip that you would tell someone who is starting their journey, or someone who might feel kind of stuck in their business.
Yeah. Okay. I think my number one tip right now, after doing a whole bunch of strategy sessions in this last month of people who are feeling stuck or people who are, kind of getting their business off the ground, the thing I keep hearing is I don't know how to pick a niche. It feels scary to pick a niche. I don't know what my niche is. And I think my advice is don't stress about it. Just start talking about what you do. Start sharing it with everyone you come across. Talk about it on social media. If you go to a social networking event or an in-person networking event, excuse me, talk about it there. If you meet somebody at a coffee shop and they're like, hey, what are you doing? Tell them what you're doing. Tell them what your business is. Just like, don't be afraid to tell anyone, even if they don't seem like your ideal client, because maybe they know someone or maybe they are your ideal client. But the most important thing is just start working with people. And that's the best way to start working with people. And your niche or your ideal client avatar, if you prefer that word, I feel, comes more from experience and seeing who you work best with versus trying to put some artificial boundaries in place of like, I only work with this type of person, and it feeling really restrictive. And I think that's where people get stuck, is feeling like, well, I'm limiting my client pool to this little tiny thing. And what if there's not enough of those people? Well, don't limit yourself to start with. Work with people, get the experience, narrow your focus as you go, and become known then as the person who helps that one type of person. Treat it as more of an organic process than some strict set of rules that you need to follow.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that so much. And I also feel like a lot of people get stuck in I don't know how to pick a niche and I don't know how to form an offer. Those are the two questions that I probably answer the most. Or like their offer is something like, well, I'm just starting out, so I'm only going to charge like $50 for an hour of life coaching. And I'm like, okay, but like, what are you solving in an hour? Right? Like, and how much do you want to make in a year? So like for me, right, like my brain automatically goes to how much do you want to make in a year? And how many coaching hours do you need in order to get to that dollar amount, right? And I'm not a financial coach, but knowing those numbers in all of my businesses has helped me understand, like, okay, for the yoga studio, I had to have like 3.25 people in every single class in order to make, right, like ends meet. At the end of the day, I had to have that many people per class. Okay, so I'm going to get 4 people in, and then I'm already going to have a profit, right? I'm going to have that 0.75% of profit. With the photo stuff, right? Like I knew I wanted to make a certain amount of money, and then I would basically divide up the weekends to say, okay, how many weddings do I need to photograph in order to meet that goal? How many family sessions, right? And really kind of went about it that way. That helped me really like secure that in my brain to go, okay, I need 3 photo sessions this month, or I need, like for coaching, I like to bring on 1 to 2 new clients every month. And that is enough for me to maintain a steady flow, to maintain a steady income. And, and then like you said, your niche kind of just appears, which is like this magic, mystical thing that I got so stuck on when I started coaching, right? So like, listening to you say that, I'm like, oh man, I probably could have saved myself like a year and a half worth of like pulling out my hair if I would have just started talking, right? Like with the photo stuff, with the yoga stuff, that's what I did. I started talking to everybody. Hi, I'm a photographer. I take photos. Do you need any photos taken? I would love to take your photos. Same thing with yoga. Hey, there's a yoga studio across the street from this bar. You want to come? It's $5 a class. I'm teaching tomorrow night. Will I see you there? Right? Like, so, and it rolled off the tongue so easily that I had so much success there. And then when it came to coaching, I was like, I don't know what to talk about. Right. And which is ironic for me, right? Because I am not usually at a loss for words. But I love that, right? Like if you don't know what niche to pick, just start talking. And who is in your audience? Like who is already in your audience that you've already helped, right? Who are people within your
Yeah.
friends and family that you've talked to, that you've helped, that you've helped them navigate or do whatever it is you want to do? I think sometimes we kind of forget that little piece of advice of like, oh yeah, well, I have been giving a lot of people advice on relationships or money or
Mhm.
I don't know, like whatever that thing is.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, for sure. I think there starts to become this, what I've noticed, at least with many clients, and I definitely felt this myself, especially when I was taking my social media business full time, was this fear of what are my friends and family going to think? What are they going to say about me behind my back when they see me stepping out and doing this thing? And that's a legit fear for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I also encourage people, like, think through to the end of that thought. What are you actually worried about? And can you face it? Right? Like
Mm-hmm.
my fear was, I hate saying this out loud. My fear was my father-in-law seeing my content. He's like very strict, old-fashioned. Was my father-in-law seeing my content and rolling his eyes and being like, oh my gosh, what is she doing? Right. So I like had to think through, what is the worst that would happen? The absolute worst that would happen is my father-in-law would be disappointed in me or think that I'm doing something crazy. Like, can I live my life knowing my father-in-law doesn't approve of my business? Yeah, I can. In the end, it turned out that my fears were totally unfounded. He's one of my biggest supporters, and he's constantly telling people, oh, my daughter-in-law does social media management. My daughter-in-law does business coaching. My daughter-in-law wrote a
Mm-hmm.
chapter in a book. Like, he's one of my biggest supporters. But I had to get over my own internal dialogue to like face that and find that out. But that does
Right.
happen, I think, more often than what we recognize.
Oh yeah, I would totally agree. Um, and I think facing those fears, I think sometimes facing those fears is harder than like thinking of all of the things that could go wrong, right? Like your brain is like, yep, I can come up with a list of 72 things that are wrong, and these things will go wrong, instead of just like facing them and like looking at that list and then going, okay, yeah, my father-in-law might be disappointed. Meh, okay, can I live my life knowing that? Yep, probably, right? Like, can I live my life
Yeah,
knowing that, maybe my sister doesn't like the content that I put out? Yeah, probably, because she's probably not my ideal client. So,
right.
I think looking at that and then giving your brain that answer of like, well, if this happens, then this is maybe one of the outcomes that could happen, right? Like looking at that is definitely something that I've seen a lot of people, and I've coached quite a few women, through that. And, we've gotten to that point and they're like, yeah, but what if my family sees my posts? And I'm like, yeah, what if they do?
That's going
How's
to happen.
It's going to happen, right? Like, and
Yeah,
you could unfriend them on Facebook. Sure. You could block them from the post. Sure. Do you want to go through all that work? That's up to you. Um, but at the end of the day, what if they actually support what you're doing? And what if they think you're crazy, right? Because that was one of my fears, was like, oh my gosh, if I tell people that I'm going to be a coach now, like, oh, the 3 businesses, like, what am I doing? Right. And it's just all this stuff.
yep,
And
yep.
it took me 2 years to like talk about my coaching business on Facebook before I was like, is any of my family, right? Like looking like, oh my gosh, okay, are they commenting on this? Right? Like, are they
Right.
seeing this? And then once I started talking about it, people were like, oh, I'm so glad you're finally a business coach. This is such a great move for you. You're going to be so successful. And I'm like,
Oh, I love it. I love it.
okay, all right, good. Right? Like fear gone. I can
Yeah,
finally,
yeah,
right?
that's awesome.
Yeah. So, what is one piece of advice that you would tell your younger self?
Ooh, that's a good one. Um, I would tell my younger self, don't burn it down. In the first year of doing my social media management business full time, I grew really fast, way faster than what I could handle. And I just didn't have the systems in place, the mental fortitude in place, the mindset in place to manage the clients that were coming in. And I kind of panicked. I didn't renew contracts with a couple of clients because I didn't think I could handle working for them anymore. And I kind of sabotaged a third client relationship subconsciously, um, because I was so overwhelmed. I just couldn't handle it. If I could go back and do it over, I would tell myself two things. The first thing would be take it a little more slowly. You don't have to go all in and hustle right away to bring in all of these clients at once. You can bring in a client, onboard them, take a month or two to get up to speed with their work. Because especially in done through social media, there's a lot that needs to be done and a lot of onboarding that needs to be done. And I wasn't giving myself the brain space to do that for every new client during this specific period of time. The other thing would be, don't burn it to the ground. Hold on to those clients that you have and figure out how to make this work. It's going to be a struggle for 6 months probably, but you'll come out on the other side of those 6 months way better off than you will if you shut everything down and have to start over basically from the ground up with just those two like anchor clients that you have held on to forever in a day. Like, I would have saved myself so much heartache. I would have built so much more self-trust. I probably would have, it is what it is at this point. But yes, that is kind of my thing. I want to keep other people from doing, like, take it in a pace that's comfortable for you. And if you make a mistake, that doesn't mean burn it down. That doesn't mean you're not cut out for business. It doesn't mean all of these things. It just means something's not working for you. You need to figure out what that is and then remedy that situation. Don't shut it all down.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that so much, right? Because I think, we always look at all of the people who are successful and we see, and social media, both a blessing and a curse, right? It allows us to connect, but also like usually it only allows us to see all of that like perfection, right? Like all of those perfect things. And not everyone talks about those bad days, and not everyone talks about the like, oh man, like this launch didn't work how I wanted it to work, right? Like, and I think, like, especially if it's one of your first launches, or if it's like your first launch that doesn't work and you're like, that's it, I'm done, I'm burning it to the ground, this isn't working, right? Where, like having a coach like you or I, where you can go to that coach and say, okay, so this isn't working how I want it to, help, right? Like, and have someone to like be there to talk with you and walk through things and just go through some of the things that you might not see. I think it's so powerful, right? It's so awesome to be able to connect and have people.
Yeah, 100%. And I would also say, don't be afraid to get really vulnerable with your coach. I was working with a coach at that point in time, and I think I never truly admitted to her I was struggling with. In my head, it was just like this overwhelm, and I couldn't even process it. And that's my responsibility, right? It's my responsibility to recognize I have this problem, I need to talk through. But I was just like, every time we would meet, I'd be like, yeah, it's good, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, but I'm gonna end this contract with this client and then bring in a new client who's less work. Like, no, that's not actually how business works.
Right.
But yes, yeah, had I been able to verbally articulate to her the actual problem I was dealing with in my head, I think that would have helped me as well. So find the right coach for you, because this is when I was still working with that coach that I did not align with in methodology. And I think had I been someone who understood my personality, understood my need to consider all of the options, process things verbally, like that could have been a whole different relationship and a whole different outcome at that point in time.
Yeah, for sure. So one of my favorite questions to ask my coaching clients is, how do you like to be coached? right? Like how are you best coached? And I was asked that question by a coach of mine, and that really stuck with me because I was able to say, well, I enjoy feedback and I enjoy it. Like, I like it if I haven't said anything in a while, like if we have like Voxer or whatever, right? Like text support, like I enjoy it if you like not come at me, but like, say, hey, been pretty quiet. Like, tell me how things are going. Like, it's not that I don't want to talk to you, but sometimes I have so much going on in life that it's just one more thing I have to do. So like, I appreciate the check-ins. I also appreciate some of the like, like questions and stuff like that. And that has really helped me provide, I feel like, a deeper level of service for my clients, right? Asking them like, how do you like to be coached, and how do you best receive feedback? Because if you don't receive feedback well in a certain way, like I don't want to do it that way, right? Like, because I'm probably going to have feedback or follow-up questions for you, not because I don't think your stuff is good, but just clarification, right? Like, also I've got a 5-year-old who loves to ask questions. So like, it's not lost on me to just know that when I say a statement, there's going to be like an onslaught of questions. So like, it's just part of my life at this point. So I wind up doing that to people, and I'm like, okay, if you don't want the onslaught of questions, that's fine. I respect that, but just please tell me, because otherwise it's just like normal for that to come out of me.
I like it.
All right. So the last question today is, if you were a kitchen gadget or utensil, what would you be and why?
That's a good one that I'm going to have to ponder here for a second, because my gut instinct was like, I'm your Amazon Echo. That's not really a kitchen gadget, is it? Right? Like, I want to be the person that as you're processing through some of the things you need to do in your business, you're like, hey, Kelly, can I just talk through this with you? Right? Like, I love being that person for my clients, but that's not really a kitchen gadget. I'm going to be your coffee maker, because just like your coffee, like, lifts you up, it's a little moment of peace in your day. I want to be the coach for my clients who is encouraging them, lifting them up, helping them see their own amazingness in their journey, even when they're having a bad day. Like, that's not to say you can't wallow in your garbage for a little bit. You absolutely can, but then let's talk through it, let's work through it, and let's turn that frown upside down. I hate saying it. That was the first thing that came to my mind.
I love it.
Yeah. I've heard feedback from a couple of clients recently that's like, you're just the best cheerleader. You're always on my corner. You're always in my corner. You're always on my side. Even when I'm really struggling with this, you can help hear what I'm saying and help me process through it in a way that I feel so much better afterwards. And then you encourage me to go take the action without any shame for, the negative thoughts or the mistakes I've made or the whatever. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. That's what this is all about.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that so much. That's so awesome. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. So tell everyone how they can connect with you. Where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I spend most of my time on Facebook. So probably your best bet is to find me on Facebook. I'm just Kelly VanHolven. You'll probably want to go to the show notes to see how that's spelled. You can also head over to my website. Same thing. It's just my name, kellyvanholven.com. Do you want me to spell it out here, or you want me just to put it in the show notes?
No, I will totally put it in the show notes. Yes, all of the spellings will be down below. So yes, make sure if you're driving, wait till you're done driving. But if you're not, head down to the show notes and you'll be able to see where to connect with Kelly.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Yay. Well, have an amazing day. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad we were able to connect and get you on the show.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you for having me, Maggie. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Wow, what a great interview. Thank you so much for showing up here on the Chaos to Clarity podcast Again, my name is Maggie. I'm so excited to connect with you. You can find all of the information, all of the links below in the show notes for today's interview. And I hope you have the best day ever.